Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly,
he's our
dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and my sisters. I don't want anybody to mention Atlanta Falcons to me, okay? We're feeling some kind of way right now with that disastrous loss with the Dallas Cowboys. But listen, I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and thank you so much for joining me. I trust and pray that you've had a beautiful day, that you were fed the word, or that you preached the word and God was glorified. Perhaps somebody was saved. Thank you for spending a little time with me today as we have the third of our final initial conversation with the Episcopal Aspirants. And I'm so delighted to have these five brothers here, whom I know and respect and love, sharing with me on today. Now, somebody asked, I didn't see the sister Episcopal candidates. And I said, well, I interviewed them just a little bit over a month ago. So please go to the CME Church webpage, and you'll be able to pull that particular one up, as well as the one that I did last week. Let me take a moment, as I always do, to greet our Senior Bishop Lawrence L. Reddick and his wife, Sister Wendy Jones Reddick, the College of Bishops and their spouses, chaired by Bishop James B. Walker. Let me also greet my bishop, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown Sr., and the First Lady, Dr. Louise Baker Brown. And let me thank Dr. Teresa Duhart for her continuous support of this show and all that she does. I have a few announcements before I bring our guest up, and I'll share these announcements towards the end. I think these are important in the life of the church. This week, we celebrate the installation of the 11th president of the Interdenominational Theological Center. That is President Matthew Wesley Williams, beginning on Wednesday. And I think a lot of these events are going to be televised or streamed as well. We know that we have the Pastors Conference and the 78 Founders Celebration of the Phillip School of Theology, which several on here are graduates of. And we are excited, looking forward to having Dean Brown and Bishop Sylvester Williams and Dr. Clarence Kelby Heath, who's the president of the Phillips Alumni Association, back on in December to tell us about the program that has been planned. Of course, we have the Women's Missionary Council Executive Board meeting coming up in February. And so you can plan for that also on this coming Tuesday, I believe, November 16th. The Praxis Circle Network is sharing Sisters with a Vision for Justice in the Christian Church. And that, of course, is led by Dr. Essie Clark George and Reverend Dr. Regina Reese Young. And they have a stellar panel of guests. So I know many of you will be tuning in to that. Also on Tuesday evening, we have another episode of See Me Grow Dialogues and Developing Vibrant Congregations. And they have some stellar guests, Reverend David Bryant, Reverend Lisa Balboa, and Reverend Dr. Reginald Walton. And this is under the auspices of General Secretary Leon Moore and his wonderful committee. You have seen the announcement. We are getting ready in preparation for our 151st Founders Day, and we have Bishop James B. Walker, Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddick, and Bishop Henry M. Williamson serving as the celebration speakers for that. And I can't forget about the wonderful work that our young people are doing. They have announced this great schedule of events, and I look forward to having them on to talk about the work that they're doing throughout our Zion. But they have all kinds of activities planned, and I'm excited. There's a lot going on in our church, and we ought to be excited. I'm excited today because I get to spend the next hour or so with some wonderful preachers of the gospel. You don't believe me? Take a look.
I can't see it, and I'm not going to do it. Can I get a witness in here? This looks too bad. If a pastor say to you or somebody say to you, particularly when the Holy Spirit is moved, I ain't going down there because it's too dirty. I'm not going over here because I don't like him, I don't like her. I'm afraid that he's going to steal something, she's going to steal something. What did God tell you to do? If God gives you a strange order, you need to do.
When a pastor pulls a mic, it's on and popping. You can forget about it. Let me welcome the Reverend Dr. Wayne Williams. As you know, Wayne is the presiding elder of the Greenwood-Jackson district and the pastor of the Lynch Street CME Church in Jackson, Mississippi. So glad to have you on, Dr. Wayne Williams.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Skip. I certainly didn't know where you got that one from, but that takes me all the way back to the great church at Russell Memorial.
Absolutely. I had to do a little digging. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Saying, beloved, is if we want others to join in our church, when we come back in or on Zoom or whatever you're doing, we have to be excited about worship and praising God. No matter the circumstances in your life, we may be in a pandemic, but we got to get excited about God and trust God, my beloved brothers and sisters. So somebody else will ask what those people at Pentecost had. What does this mean? When somebody will say, can I have what they got?
That is the distinguished Reverend Dr. Manuel Henderson. Dr. Henderson is the pastor of the Lane Chapel CME Church in Shreveport, Louisiana. So glad to have you, Dr. Henderson, and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Brother Skip Mason. It's good to be on with you today. And I'm like Brother Wayne. I don't know where you found that one, but glad you did. And thank you for being on. And we look forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother. You as well.
Our new sanctuary with an old mind. We got to become relevant so that we can become resourceful. We can't sit back complaining talking about pastors asking for this and pastors asking for that. I'm asking because I want us to be relevant and resourceful. I know that God has given us a glorious history, but we got a bright future if we remain relevant and resourceful. If Henry Clay Button can change the sanctuary 50 years ago, why can't we do it in 2015? God has called for us to be relevant and resourceful.
That, of course, is the Reverend Peris Lester, the presiding elder of the Northeast District of West Tennessee Region, pastor of the Mount Olive CME Church in Memphis, Tennessee. Welcome, presiding elder Lester.
Thank you, Dr. Skip. I give God praise for you. I tell people, though we may have been slighted by Skip Gates, thank God we got Skip Mason.
Oh, man, that's kind of you. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. I'll be back with you in just a moment.
Give God some praise. Let me get some praise. Amen. Because it ought to be a praise on the inside of you. When you think about how good the Lord has been to you. Amen. Do I have the witness up in here? Is there anybody here who know how good the Lord has been to you? Oh, come on. We don't need to go on this side. Is anybody on this side who can testify, preacher, I know how good the Lord has been to me? Amen. Is anybody on this side who can testify, I know how good the Lord has been to me? Amen. And I don't know what you're coming to on a Thursday night, but I come to give God some praise. I come to give God some thanks. I come to say, Lord, I thank you.
Lord, I think that's enough. let me welcome Reverend Dr. Billy Holloway, the pastor of the St. John CME Church in Pine Mountain, Georgia. Welcome, my brother.
Well, Dr. Mason, well, thank you for allowing me to come. And I tell you, my goodness, man, back with that message. But it's
but I did a little digging. We'll be back to you in just a second. And last but certainly not least,
God specializes in doing the impossible.
Yes, He does.
When others say it can't be done, just remember God specializes in doing the impossible. When others say it's never been done before, just remember God specializes in doing the impossible. When they say you're not going to make it, just remember God specializes in doing the impossible. It's not about your power, it's not about your knowledge, it's about even not what you even know. It's about what God can do if you just believe.
I want somebody to know today that God specializes in doing the impossible. Let me welcome the Reverend Dr. Phillip D. Washington, the presiding elder of the Detroit and Mid-Michigan districts, the pastor of the Dozier Memorial CME Church in Flint, Michigan. Welcome, presiding elder Dr. Washington.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. I'm just excited to be here. You have been a blessing to us, and I just couldn't wait to get here. I can say I arrived now that I'm on the Skip Mason show. Amen. We just thank you. So you've done a fantastic job, and I just thank God for you and for this ministry.
Well, bless you, my friend. And all of you all can send me a little love gift to the building fund for digging up those sermons, okay?
It's on its way.
Get it. No problem.
Send me your cash app. Send me your cash app.
I'll send you the cash app. But listen, really though, I'm glad to have this conversation. First of all, as I've said to all of the aspirants, God bless you, even for offering yourself, and in doing so, you know, having to go through what aspirants have to go through in terms of campaigning and moving about. But today, this is not a candidates forum. This is a conversation. And I want to be real clear because I'll invite each of you back individually, and I can spend some time and you can talk a lot about then those things that you visualize and that you want to do with our church. And I know that this church would be grateful for that. But we just want to talk about our church today. And so the first question that I'm going to put up, as I've done with all of the previous candidates, and all of the questions have been the same, except for one that I'm going to add today. The first question is, what is good about the CME Church? I'm going to start with you, Dr. Wayne Williams, and then I'll just work my way around. What is good about the CME Church, Wayne?
I'm so happy you asked what's good. First of all, let me seriously say to you how much I appreciate you inviting us and putting this together. Certainly, we want to say, and give me a second or so, certainly to all of our bishops, as you said, the Reverend Fathers and Mother of the Church, and all of the members of the CME Church. What's good about the church is the word CME, Christian Methodist Episcopal. The CME Church is a good church because we are connectional in scope. It does not matter where you go. The beauty of the CME Church is the koinonia. It's the fellowship that we have one to another. For example, I just need to just share this, that you, Dr. Mason, as you know, your son is here in Jackson, Mississippi, and we have his back because he's a member of the CME Church. So you call and say, hey, I have a son coming here, and tons of others. So the CME Church, what's good about it is the fellowship and as well as the connectionalism. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. And thank you so much for the wonderful offering spirit of taking care of my son while he's at historic Tougaloo College. Dr. Henderson, same question to you. What's good about the CME Church?
First, let me say thank you, Dr. Mason, for this platform to be on with my other brothers who are aspirants for the office of bishop. Just generally, overall, let me first say that I think the CME Church has a good working denominational system of checks and balances for the most part. And I think the other thing that I would say that is good about the CME Church is its connectional camaraderie. I was taught early on that a CME anywhere is a CME everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Henderson. Dr. Washington, same question to you.
Again, let me just thank you again for the question. You've asked this question to several of us, and it's a wonderful question. Excuse me. That's my bishop calling. Let me just acknowledge my bishop, Bishop Sylvester Williams Sr. Again, it's a wonderful question, and you've asked it to several of us, and you've heard many answers. But let me just say quickly, it's rich history, it's rooted in the Word, and its ability to serve this present age. Our church was born out of a turbulent time during the aftermath of the Civil War and the Reconstruction period, a time when African Americans were exercising their spiritual gifts and their civil rights. And we were moving into a new area, new possibilities of new experiences. And 41 enslaved men who had been oppressed, but their spirits were still soaring, had a desire to serve God free of oppression and abuse. So they started a movement and established the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church, a tender plant, and it came into fruition. So our church has a deep, rich history. We came out of adversity with a vision, with hope, empowered by God. Then the church is deeply rooted in the Word of God. The Word of God brought us through turbulent times. Our discipline is rooted in the Word. The articles of religion is rooted in the Word. The general rules are rooted in the Word. We're encouraged to study, to read, and live by the Word. And if we abide by the Word and live by the Word will be in us, and our church will continue to survive and thrive. Then last, let me just real quickly. The CME Church was designed not to be stuck in tradition. Let me say that again, because some people say we are. But the church was designed not to be stuck in tradition. We got some people that are stuck in tradition, but the CME Church was designed to be led by the Holy Spirit. It's constantly growing, shifting, adapting, re-imaging, being agile in order to meet the needs of the present age. So it's rooted in the Word, has a rich history, and is designed to meet the needs of our present age. Let me start right there, because I could do like the song said, there's so many wonderful things about the CME Church. There's so many wonderful things. Let me start.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Billy Holloway, what's good about the CME Church?
Well, Dr. Mitchell, let me say again, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for creating this platform. Well, when I think about our great Zion, our great church, there's so many wonderful things I can think about our church and talk about our church, about the good of our church. I can think of the opportunity to serve. This church will give you an opportunity to serve. And I also like the camaraderie that we have through the connection of our church. And then our church also promotes educational growth. I know when I was back in Mississippi, Bishop Hoyt was the presiding prelate of the 4th Episcopal District. He had some gifts in me. And he said, Brother Holloway, you need to go to seminary. And I hadn't even thought about seminary, did not even know anything about Phillip School of Theology. And it was because of Bishop Hoyt. He encouraged me to go. And he said, we want to support you, because he said that our church are developing preachers. So I say that the good thing about our church is that our church will educate you, train you, and also give you an opportunity to serve in our church.
Thank you. Let me unmute. Presiding Elder Lester, what's good about our church?
Let me first again say thank you, Dr. Mason, for giving me this opportunity to be on this platform along with my colleagues, to our senior bishop, to my bishop, Bishop Williamson, and to the College of Bishops. I am grateful for this opportunity. There's so many great things, as the colleagues have already stated, that's so good about the church, the CME Church, that is. My bishop has a phrase, and I agree with it, that the CME Church is about salvation, education, and liberation. And it makes a great difference in what we see in terms of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, with all of the ills that persons may point out that we have. There are so many great things that the CME Church has done. I was blessed to attend both a CME College and the CME Seminary. And I can tell you that when I was at Lane College, there were so many who were not CMEs, but yet I could be on that campus and see what we as the CME Church is doing and still doing, and educating as Dr. Holloway said earlier, educating so many thousands of young African Americans, especially across our country. What I also like about the CME Church is that it's rich heritage, how God has blessed us to primarily been a rural church, but yet we have grown into other cosmopolitan areas. And I like the richness of it, being able to go down south and then go out west, and then even here now in the Mid-South to see the richness of the CME Church. And I think somebody said earlier that the CME Church is not just traditional, because I have been able to see different CME churches with different worship styles, different ways, but yet we all share this common bond as a connectional church. So I would say that the church has so many great qualities. And even now in this pandemic, what you're doing on this platform, it shows me again how connected we are, that we look forward to seeing what's going to be next week, that we support each other, we lift up each other. So that's what really makes the CME Church really a family. And for these last 30 years, some of my closest friends, my closest allies are in the CME Church. And they're not just colleagues, but they're like family.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for those affirming responses about what's good about our church. And certainly you wouldn't be offering yourself as an aspirant if you didn't think there was something good about this church that you have given and served. But in that very same light, you know, like any institution, there are some challenges, you know, and I won't say what's not good about the church, but I would ask you to tell us, in your opinion, what are some of the challenges that we are facing as a church body? Presiding Elder Williams, I'll let you begin again.
Wow, what an awesome question. What are some of the challenges? Some of the challenges that I see as a pastor, as well as a presiding elder, is that of the declining of membership. And this was before the pandemic. We've got to come up with a way to interact with our members by introducing new concepts to them. We can no longer do business as usual. And I know you've heard me also say through the years, and most of my colleagues only know this, is this whole notion of finance. This whole notion of finance as it relates to our claims and things of that nature. Now, Dr. Mason, I'm saying to you, we've got to have money to operate. Don't get me wrong, we need those $3 and $4 million a year to deal with our schools and all other expenses. But we must come up with some creative ways to offset the expenses of our church, because unfortunately, a lot of the new generation, the Generation Z, the Zebras, if you will, they are not as committed. And as a consequence of that, we've got to come up with some new ways of operating our church. So back again, I'm convinced that basically it's the decline of membership, and we've got to find a way to make sure that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater to work together.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elder Williams. Dr. Henderson, same question. What do you observe? What are the challenges of this church that we face?
Thank you, Brother Skip, for that question. I think some of the challenges that face us, first, I believe we can do a better job of addressing the immediate falling membership in our church. And I think, especially in some of our rural and urban churches, regarding growth and their ministry development, I believe that there is a need for relevant ministry strategies for church growth regarding geographic. Different areas have different issues, and I think we can spend more time helping those churches develop we can do a better job of seeking out and assessing the strengths and vulnerabilities within our rural and urban churches. I also believe that we are, as a major mainline denomination, we can do more, or we need to ask ourselves rather, are we doing more to embrace the past or preparing for our future? And if we are going to continue to exist, I believe we're going to have to address some of those concerns. Another is we're going to have to address or readdress the finances in terms of how we receive our assessments. We're going to have to ask for some different ways to do things. And I think if we don't, then we may end up taxing ourselves out of business.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Washington, same question to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. Again, let me thank you for this question, because it's a sign of courage to ask about challenges. We all got something good to say, but a great institution is always addressing these challenges. And let me just say, I agree with my colleagues. We have to also address our branding. And also, one of the challenges that I'm looking to see the implementation and the execution of the strategic plan that's been shown to us. It's going to cover a multitude of things. But again, we must not be fearful of our challenges and stray away from them. We've got to address them. So yes, our branding, stewardship, church planning, redistricting, there are several. But the key thing is not to stray away from our challenges, but to face them.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Holloway, some of the challenges that we're facing from your perspective and lens.
Well, that's a great question, Dr. Mason. And I can say that I've had the privilege of serving not only our urban churches, but I've also served rural churches. And the challenges that I see when I was pastoring the rural churches is that declining membership. And I just believe that in order for the church to be sustainable and to grow, we've got to look at finances. We've got to also look at some consolidation. And we've got to also be practical in ministry and realizing that some churches just cannot afford to pay what they're being assessed. You know, that's the challenge that I found in some of the rural settings. But again, we've got to be able to help and assist those rural churches, and by bringing new ideas to them, like this technology that we're using today. Many persons never would have thought that we would be having a meeting with the candidates by StreamYard. But look what the pandemic has done. It has forced us to still do ministry, but we're doing it differently. So I think that the challenge is for the churches that we're going to have to look at their strategic plan and also accept some of the recommendations and implement some of the things that are in the strategic plan, and not just have a plan and don't follow the recommendation of the plan.
Thank you. And let me stop and commend you, Billy, for the excellent work that you've done in terms of media and showcasing the CME Church. I mean, who has not been accosted by Billy at some conference with this microphone? And I get it now. I understand. And I think you're on AIB now. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're on AIB network, which reaches 2.5 million households.
That is fantastic. You know, and so those households, wherever you go, the CME Church is there as well in some shape, form, or fashion.
That's
so
correct.
Let me give respect where respect is due. And we thank you for that. Presiding Elder Lester, some of the challenges through your lenses that you see facing our church today.
Thank you again, Dr. Mason. I would say, as that old adage says, the only person that really likes change is the baby with a dirty diaper. I think one of the greatest challenges in our church is change. What all the colleagues have just uttered, that we are sometimes afraid of change. I think one thing this pandemic has done, and it happened in 2020, where God gave us clear vision that there are certain things had to change, where we had to find ourselves using these platforms like StreamYard, like Facebook, like YouTube, that we have to change. And I think sometimes in the CME Church, and just like in other facets of life, change is hard. change is hard. Changing what we need to do to reach people, changing not our theology, but changing our methodology of how we get the word out, how we share the word. Our methods have to change. And one thing we could say as a part of the Methodist body, we know that they teased John Wesley and Charles Wesley because they were methodical. And I think we have lost that in some ways of being methodical and saying, okay, if this is not working, what do we need to do? You know, the classic definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So I think one of our greatest challenges for the CME Church, and indeed much of life, is that we are afraid to change. And I mean, even at my own local church, we had made the investment to redo the sanctuary. We got all this equipment, but I'll admit, even as a pastor, I was afraid to go online. I didn't think we were prime time ready and blah, blah, blah. But the pandemic forced me to say, you know what? You better go with what you got. You know, we got to go meet people where they are. And in this pandemic, God has just really shown me, Jesus says that we're to go ye therefore into all of the world. And the first W in WWW is World Wide Web. Mm-hmm. And we have to not be afraid to go out there. We've got to change to say this is where people are. People carry their life in their hand. Mm-hmm. If you leave your cell phone at home, you will turn right back around and go get it. So we have to be able enough to meet people where they are. It's a change that we have to do. And I think that's one of our most critical areas that we have to be willing to change. Even in terms, one last thing, even in terms of, as you were talking about sending you an offering. Now, old time, we would have wrote you a check.
Yeah, that was just a joke. Let me say that.
No, but I'm just saying that in terms of old time, we would have had to write you a check and mail it to you. But now we could cash out. We could do all these other things in which we can get money to persons faster. So we've got to be willing to change.
Well, you know, Cash App is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing for the church. It's a curse if you have 2 children who are in college. Okay.
Not for them. Not for them.
Not for them. You know. But listen.
High school. High school.
Right. So all of you all are pretty much on the same page that we do have some challenges that we're going to have to address. And as an aspirant, you know, in another setting, you would be asked, how will you address it? You know, but for today's sake, we're looking at, you know, having to deal with finances and rural church and technology. There are a couple of other things that we need to talk about that I think are still challenges in our church. The first one is what was called by some of the connectional young adult members a mass exodus of young preachers. I think I want to turn that around and say that there is apparent that there are preachers who have left the pulpit, who are doing other things as well, and perhaps in some instances in sizable numbers. And the other issue deals with women in the ministry. And where are we on that? But the first one I want to deal with is this alleged movement of preachers who have decided that they either no longer want to serve the itinerancy or serve in the CME Church. You all are seasoned preachers. That's just another way of saying you're old and you've been around in the CME Church for a long time. And you withstood a whole lot. You've gone through. I know you have. You cannot help but to go through. But what do you say to these young people, young preachers, and not all of them are young, but to these persons who have said, "Listen, okay, I've had enough. I'm moving. I'm going somewhere else." What do you all say to them? How do you encourage them? And what do we do about it as a church? And I'm just going to open it up to anybody that wants to respond. And just go at it. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say, for me, I look at chaplaincy, and I think a lot of persons who I've talked with, and I saw that blog as well, and I've even had preachers to call me and ask me about chaplaincy. And one thing about our church is that, and I thank God for Bishop Stewart, who pushed chaplaincy, and Bishop Snowden Jefferson, she's also pushing chaplaincy. So that's another form of ministry where you can still be connected to the church and not necessarily be preaching on Sunday morning. Because we realize that we live in a day and age now, let's just be honest, a lot of our churches cannot afford to pay you a sustainable wage with insurance, retirement. But whereas you can do both. I do both. I'm proud of St. John. I love St. John. And I'm there, with them, a small congregation. They can't afford to pay me the salary that I made when I was at Hosey in Macon. But yet, because of my counseling with chaplaincy, I'm able to do some other things to supplement that. And that allowed me to still be connected and still be in ministry, still be part of the connection, and still being able to do ministry. So I think that if we look at chaplaincy, and I think we have to let the person know that you might not necessarily in the pulpit on Sundays, but you can do chaplaincy, because chaplaincy is a ministry. And our church, we are not enforcing, but we promote that. And it's in the discipline, chaplaincy in the CME Church.
Right.
And
so providing some other options.
Yeah, because I think that we need other options, because again, let's face it, everybody cannot be at West Mitchell, but again, you can be at a church and you can have other options and still do ministry, and you can still be fulfilled. I haven't pastored a major mega church, but I've been in ministry almost 30 years in the CME Church, and I've enjoyed it. And you all see me at all the meetings. Yeah. And no matter where I serve, I make that church the best church. And wherever I go, I tell folks, I'm at the Great St. John. And the way I talk about that church, folks, everybody want to come all across the connect. They wonder, well, I got to come to St. John.
That's right. That's right.
Brother Skip, I think.
And then Manuel and then Wayne.
Okay, Brother Skip, in this question in terms of the mass exodus of our church, I would reframe, or I don't know if I would use the word mass. But certainly there is some folk leaving, some exodus from our church, and I think we may want to ponder the question why, and I think we will find out that the reasons is it varies from person to person. However, I do believe that one of the ways we can address this mass exodus, or exodus, if you will, I don't want to use the word mass, is better communication between pulpit and bench. And what I mean by that, better communication between pastors and bishops, or college of bishops. Let me just share, if you don't mind, one aspect of what I mean. Young pastors and young seminarians, when they come out of seminary or they come into ministry, whether we acknowledge it or not, they have some expectations. And I think the bench, the College of Bishops, ought to address these concerns. For instance, when I graduated from seminary, 35 years ago, when I came back home to Shreveport, to the Louisiana region, my bishop chatted with me. And what I mean by that, he came to me and said, Reverend Henderson, I know you graduated seminary, etc. He said, but while you were in seminary, there were some preachers who didn't have seminary degrees that was keeping these churches alive. So it wouldn't be fair for me to take them out and put you in. But what he said to me was, when the next opening come up, you're the next in line. We need to address the expectations of these young preachers so that their expectation will be in line with the thinking of our College of Bishops, so that we have to be careful about promising people the world when they come out of seminary. And we know that everyone that come out of seminary may not get the world.
Excellent. Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah, thank you. So
and we all on first name basis now.
Yeah, we're on first name basis. I think we'll go with Skip and Wayne. Okay, got you, and all my colleagues here. One of the things we need to realize and recognize, first and foremost of all, I think one of our biggest mistakes is, soon as I am called to preach, immediately I go to the pastorate. That's not how it is. We've got to get away from that. We've got to get away from that. Just because I'm called to preach called does not mean I'm called to be a pastor. And once we realize that, that will help us as we move forward. Anyway, what I was going to say is, once the young people, I see the persons, I'm like my colleague now, some years ago in seminary, I'm like my colleague that said that, but the bottom line is, when we were coming along, I considered my group, and Billy Holloway and all of us, we were all classmates together, somewhat of the last of the gladiators. That is, those persons that just accepted whatever you get, whatever we had to do, we did it. No matter what. And I came out of seminary, graduated from Phillip, ITC. I went to Carolina Bluff, over there at his home church, over there in Henderson's church. He knows that. Carolina Bluff was a small church, but I went straight to Carolina Bluff and was glad to do it. But most of the group that we see nowadays, Dr. Mason, this generation, initially I used to be upset with them. I didn't think that I would really accept this. Right. I would hear them say to the bishops, "What's the package? What's the package?" Well, in this day and age, I understand a person with a graduate degree, with a master's of divinity degree from a bona fide seminary, asking somewhat what's the package. Now, that don't mean that you're not supposed to go where you go. You're supposed to, go where you went, stay where you went. I'm not saying that, but I understand in this day and age, when you sit up there with tens of thousands of dollars that you have to pay off of our student loan, that wasn't that long ago that I just paid mine off. I'm saying to you that you somewhat upside down, and they begin to start thinking, what are we doing? Right. I'm a graduate of blah, blah, blah seminary, and I'm going, I don't mind serving in this small church, but I can't even pay. But yet I have an MDiv degree. So we got to take a look at that as it relates to how we deal with the Generation Zs, if you will, that will ultimately take over this church. So a problem is, we unfortunately do not have in our denomination those caliber of churches for those graduate persons to serve. It is what it is. So we need to just decide, those of us in this ministry, are we in it because of the money, or are we in it because we love the church? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Phillip, go right ahead, please.
I'm glad that you've been asking this question, because it's a question a statement that's being made across the connection. First of all, I don't believe we have a mass exodus of pastors. We do have a shortage. Right. We have some issues, but the emphasis should not be on those that left, but those who have been faithful despite the hurts, the struggles, and disappointments. We have a mass number of pastors that have served the church for 20, 30, 40, even 50 years, made sacrifices, moved their families across the nation to serve God and his people. Men and women who preach in season, out of season, regardless of their situation. As someone just said, they did it because of the love of the church. A mass exodus? No, we don't have a mass exodus. We have pastors who retired. They've left due to physical and health challenges, career opportunities, family concerns. And then there were those that left because they didn't understand what God said. We have some issues that we must address when it comes to pastors, of course. Pastors' compensation, the itinerancy. We got to start to establish a pipeline which nurtures those who've been called, support, mentor, coach, develop, and train those ministries. And then we got to train and teach our churches the importance of taking care of the pastor, of those who come in and provide ministry to those congregations. So a mass exodus, I don't see that. But I see the mass number of pastors who've been in the church serving. They're not always at the bishop's table. They're not getting all accolades, but they serve faithfully. And we need to somehow lift them up, and that will let others know what it truly means to be a pastor, to serve God's people. Because it's not about the salary packages, as Wayne said, not about salary packages. It's about serving God and the people. Well, I hear that all the time about this mass exodus, but no, I look at the mass number of pastors that continue to serve.
Thank you for your perspective. Paris?
Thank you. Again, I don't know if we've had a mass exodus. I think one thing, unfortunately, preachers come and go, but we do want to be sensitive to the matters that persons are dealing with. I can only share my own story, and Wayne and Billy, we were all at ITC, and I do understand the struggles. When I came to seminary, married with a family, when I left Lane College, my rent was $325 a month. When I got to Atlanta, it was $700 a month. So I had to make adjustments. Oh, yeah. And just had I had a son, and they could attest. I would bring my son to class. That's because true. Even then, I mean, daycare was $100 a week just to provide daycare. So I do recognize that we do need resources. But I think the thing about this ministry, if God has called you to this ministry, and God called you in the CME Church, as Paul says, that my life becomes a living sacrifice. There were sacrifices that I had to make. Maybe I couldn't get what I want. Maybe I couldn't drive what I want. Maybe I couldn't live where I want until I was able to afford it. And I think a lot of times what has happened, not just to young preachers, but to just people in general, right now, everything is so commercialized. Everything, is I call it the J.G. Whitworth mentality. I want it, and I want it now. I want a big church now. I want a big salary now. I want a big house now. I want all these things right now. And that's just not the reality. And I think that we have to begin to, again, address that and say, it takes a while to build this. Anything that grows overnight, that's called swelling. And that's not good. So therefore, you have to grow as a process. And as the church, and it's given our lives to this church, once you get there, the late Bishop Dozier used to tell us, you got to grow where you're planted, son. Yeah. And Dr. Washington tell you, Bishop Ice say, hey, that's all I got. So you're going to take this, so you are. And you worked it. Mm-hmm. And now the good part about it is that he would help us, mentor us, and other great other pastors. And now it's funny being at this stage of my life, and no longer can I say I'm one of the young preachers anymore, but being at this stage now to be able to assist those young preachers who need help, being able to assist in mentorship, being able to assist, even if it's financial, but doing something to help them. But I don't think it's a mass exodus. I think that a lot of times it's just what we want, and we want it now. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case.
So I don't want to belabor it, but let me push back on the question. Could it be that there is a gap in terms of age and understanding and maturity with the young preachers, who are faced with perhaps some additional challenges that many of you may not have been, or we may not have been, in terms of finances, family, etc. What I'm just simply saying, and I think Jermaine asked the most important question, Reverend Jermaine Woods, who's also a banker as well, very prominent banker. And I'm going to have him on when I talk about bivocational, which I said most of us are bivocational pastors when you look at it. But, he said that there are not enough high salary churches to accommodate seminary trained and seasoned pastors. Why is that after 150 years? And I think he's asked a legitimate question. I think sometimes we're hesitant, and I get that, about being very critical about our church, because it means that we'll sometimes have to peel back the layers and to answer a question like that. You don't have to give me an answer, but I think it's something that it is worth looking at, because what was published on the Facebook page was a listing of all of the people. Billy, I think you said you saw it. Some of you all may have seen it too. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I when I saw the listing of people, and they had either left the pulpit or gone to chaplains and doing other things, but it was a compelling list to look at.
But it's not anything new, Skip. It's not anything new.
No, you're right.
We've had preachers leave. I mean, what it has done now with Facebook and other things, we can air our dirty laundry.
Yeah.
We used to keep it in house.
Absolutely.
So now we air it, and it just gets blown up.
Yeah.
But I mean, and it's sad to say we've had other preachers. I know many colleagues who started preaching with me, got ordained, that are doing other things.
Right.
And we know many CMEs who have left, but yet sometimes even when we have our national meetings, many of them come back and visit.
Yeah.
Many of them come back and participate. So it happens. And even going back to the question about why we don't have these certain salaries, I think it goes again back to the change. Some of these churches we probably should have closed or merged. And then also what we do as pastors, I'll just say it, we set the tone. How your church acts is a reflection of you. When you've been there after a while, your church takes on your personality.
Right.
If you say your church is high strung and crazy, look in the mirror.
Yeah.
So your church takes on that personality. So I believe that when you pastor church, and you're talking about resources. Again, as a pastor, when you meet persons' needs, God can use those same persons to help meet your needs. Meeting those needs, and I'm not just talking about in the church, but in that community.
Sure.
Getting out, not just sitting behind the desk. I get it. We got to study to show ourselves approved. But also in our study, we got to go outside the wall.
Yeah.
Go and reach people. And again, God has given us this as a means now, that now from your pulpit, from your wherever, you can reach millions.
Right.
How bad do you want it? Are you willing to work hard to get it? And I'm not saying that just for young preachers, but I'm talking about all preachers. What we need to do to make it work. Because again, I go back to Isa. He said, "Son, I don't."
Wayne jump in.
Okay, he said, "I don't care whatever the church conference votes for your salary. If you don't raise it, you won't get it. They can pass any budget you want, but if you don't raise it, you don't get it."
You sound like you've been around Bishop Dozier T. Isom too long.
Yeah.
I've heard us Isom too.
I've heard us Isom. We speak his name tonight.
Yes, we do. Let me just share this right quick. One of the ways, and we know it's going to be difficult if we could ever get there, a lot of the various judicatories, when you get your MDiv, some judicatories, if I'm pastoring 3 members, and the bishop sends me here for on assignment, she sends me on an assignment, he sends me on this assignment, it would not affect my salary as a person with an MDiv. Does that make sense? What I'm saying to you is there are some judicatories that do that, but you have to put that in the budget. Well, we don't have it in our budget because it would raise our budget, right? So what we would need to do, again, is create some, outside financial streams through community and economic development that will help pastors do that. One of the persons on this that he and I have the same ideology on that is Phillip Washington. I'm a strong believer in community and economic development. I can make my salary that way. If I have to do it that way, then I won't have to worry about if I had my 5 churches. I would treat everybody fair. Equity would be the main priority, but there's some outside stream to make sure that I could still feed my family. Unfortunately,
Wayne, you on my street, Wayne. You on my street, Wayne.
let me say this, and then I'm going to let you all chime in. But it just sounds like we have to do a better job of instructing and guiding young preachers. Manuel, you did allude to that very early on. So that realistic expectations can be met, and the call to preach does not mean that you're going to go out and get a first church, you know, or second or third church for that matter, but that you will be, you know, work your way through the system. Let me throw out women in the ministry. I got to get to this, okay? And I need for you all to tell me, where are we, you know, and what we need to do. Our sisters in the ministry are doing phenomenal work, but sometimes the church and the churches don't necessarily appreciate or value. Where are you with that? What do we need to do? And we're going to ask Billy, and well, Billy, you open it up since we didn't hear from you on the last question. Give me your thoughts about where we are with women in the ministry.
Well, certainly we need to do more in that area because when I was in seminary with Wayne and Peris, that we had, I think it was Shirley Fletcher and a couple of others who were there, and they were phenomenal students, phenomenal preachers and scholars. And again, I just think that as a whole, we need to do more to embrace that, to accept that, and I can say that being here in Georgia, Bishop Brown, you know, he has 2 female presiding elders. And that's a first for Georgia. We have 2 presiding elders, and all the districts which I serve, we have a lot of leading ladies who are leading churches here in the West Georgia region. But again, I just think as a whole, we need to do more to embrace that, and also to receive it and support it. Because I saw the Facebook post about this sister who was preaching and had to preach, you know, in the parking lot, and I just, you know, now we don't. Now, I don't think our church would condone that.
Right.
At least I know the West Georgia region would not.
Right.
So again, I just think we have to do more to embrace it and let them know that they're welcome here, welcome in the CME Church, and just embrace it and show them that they have equal footing, equal opportunity. And I know when it came to the seminary, being at Phillip's, when now Bishop Brown was there as our dean, he treated us all equal in the seminary. We all came, we all fellowshiped, and we all shared terms of leadership there at Phillip's. So again, I think our church needs to do more to let folks know that we're open to come.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, indeed. Let me just say something, because I'm getting some texts that some folks are having difficulty watching it on Facebook. I'm not sure what's going on, but please spread the word that they can go straight to YouTube and watch it live. No telling what's going on with Facebook right now, but they can go to YouTube and watch it live until whatever issue is worked out.
And I'm also streaming on my page, so I've got folks streaming in as well. So.
Oh, okay, excellent. Thank you,
Brother Skip.
Yes,
I think as we address this concern of women in ministry, just speaking for myself, I think it bothers me that here in 2021, we still seem to view women in ministry as an aberration, if you will. And what I mean by aberration, by the most elementary definition of aberration, is a departure from what is normal, unusual, or expected, and typically one that is unaware. I believe women, and matter of fact, I know women have been a part of the work of the church from the beginning, even in ancient times. So I think the problem is that many men and some women have a mind block to women in leadership positions or in positions of teaching and preaching. But I think we need to go back and look at it, because that bias of gender did not begin with God. So I think it takes my mind back to the 50s and 60s, when we as a race, I think James Brown said it best: I don't want nobody to give me nothing. Open up the door and I'll get it myself. We were asking our white brothers for equality. And I believe equality focused on starting at the same line. Equity has the goal of providing everyone with the full range of opportunities and benefits. If we do that, then there would be no need for women in ministry. But unfortunately, I think we continue to perpetuate the myth that women in ministry is an aberration. And so
anybody jump in?
Be careful
Let
about
me
that.
jump in now. You know, I've been blessed to work with some powerful women in ministry. Dr. Essie Clark George, Lavisha Williams, Elder Dixie West, Reverend Diane Beverly, Dr. Patricia Havers, Dr. Karen Walker McClure, and a lot of others. And the church has made some great strides when it comes to women in ministry, but we're not where we should be.
That's right.
We have to make it an intentional thing we need to address. We got to remember that the church was founded during a male-dominated time. And we have to admit that in our culture, in our church culture, it's male-dominated in our culture. And until we make an intentional thing to make a shift, both laity and leadership, we must intentionally take on the responsibility to actively address these issues. It's just not going to happen. We can talk about it, but we must intentionally
That's right.
take on that responsibility. We've increased numbers of female pastors in some of our major churches. We elected the first female bishops from years ago, but still we got some challenges. They're not accepted by both clergy and laity. The pay equity is different. I've had to deal with congregations to help them face their prejudice and the inequity in this line of thinking, show them it's counterproductive. When a male pastor can go to a congregation with less education, and then he goes to another church, and then we supply them with another pastor who happens to be female, more experience, more education, but yet you want to cut her salary in half because she's a female. Something's wrong with that line of thinking.
That's right.
And we have to intentionally make strides to address these things, because we can talk about it all day long, but until we intentionally do something about it, it's not going to happen.
Sure. Peris, go right ahead.
Thank you, Skip. And I agree with what the colleagues have said, that I think, I know one thing we have to, as we're all men on here, our own biases that we've had, that we have to really face them and begin to own up to that. But also, as we look at the women in ministry, supporting them, doing what we can to support them. Actually, today we had our veterans worship service today, and we had our associate minister, who happens to be a female. She preached today, and preaching is not only thing she does, but other parts of ministry and embracing women. It is sad that we are having this conversation, and a lot of times we don't get as angry as we do when we hear about an injustice against a Black person as we do an injustice against a woman. And I think we've got to, as I said earlier, there are things that we have to change. And I say we, I'm including myself, that we all have to change to say we can understand, listen to them, learn from them, and also embrace them and support them in ministry. Because we as the theologian James Brown said, it may be a man's world, but it's nothing without a woman or a girl. So we definitely need to support our sisters in ministry.
Indeed, indeed. Anybody else want to chime in on that before I move to the next topic? So today, let me share a clip. I want to talk a little bit about where we are, where you are, as it relates to social justice and outreach as a denomination and as a church. Let me play a little of this clip, if you will.
That's 60 blacks. 60 blacks in Congress. 60 blacks. 4,000 Latinos. We're growing.
So today, the Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, my friend, is in Savannah at the St. Paul CME Church, where Reverend Dr. DeAndre Thurman is a rally for justice. As you know, his name was called out by the lawyer let me play this clip, and I want your input and your thoughts about where we are as a church as it relates to dealing with issues that are in our community.
Yeah, that we're going to be serially bringing these people in to sit with the victim's family one after another. Obviously, there's only so many pastors they can have. And if their pastor's Al Sharpton right now, that's fine, but then that's it. We don't want any more black pastors coming in here, or other Jesse Jackson, whoever was in here earlier this week, sitting with the victim's family, trying to influence a jury in this case. If a bunch of folks came in here dressed like Colonel Sanders with white masks sitting in the back, I mean, that would be a problem.
So all of you all have seen that. I hope you have, and if you haven't, pretend as if you have.
Yeah.
There's been a call to come to Brunswick on Thursday in a show of unity. This is across denominational lines, of course. But where are we as a church? Where are we as it relates to social justice and issues, and are our pulpits across the spectrum in Zion, being used, for that? I channel right now Love Welchum, Reverend Dr. Love Henry Welchum.
Yes.
Who said if a pastor's not preaching about social justice on Sunday, he ain't preaching about much at all.
That's it.
Okay. So y'all jump in and talk about, where you are, where we are as it relates to social justice issues in our community.
Well, let me start, Skip.
Yeah.
I plan to be there. I plan to be right there in Brunswick.
Georgia.
It's a part of our history. I know we use the term 41 ex-slaves, but they were 41 freedom fighters who dared to start a church. The AME Zions, they started north and we started south, kind of like what Malcolm X could say, by any means necessary, because he was up north. Dr. King had to use another way. So I believe it's in our DNA.
Yeah.
When the last march that Dr. King had, he was marching with a CME bishop, Bishop Smith, along with the Reverend Jesse Douglas. So we've always been in the forefront. His attorney was a CME. So we've always been in that forefront. And yes, we must stand up against all of the racism that we see. I mean, our church, one thing about Jesus, he was radical. He was radical. A lot of times, white people have made him more passive. That's to make us passive.
Right.
But we know that Jesus was radical. That's why they killed him.
Absolutely.
They didn't kill him because he was passive. They killed him because he was radical. And I think our church, that's definitely one thing that we have to continue to hold on to. Is to be radical. We have to stand up for those who are in need. We here in Memphis, we had a young man get killed in the Kroger parking lot by an unlicensed security guard. We stood with him at Mount Olive, along with attorney Ben Crump. We stood with that family. I flew out to Chicago to be a part of that funeral, that we won't stand for injustice. When I was my first year at ITC, I left Atlanta and drove to Washington, D.C. to stand at the Million Man March. Because I do recognize that if we don't do it, I mean, that's been a part of my calling since I started. Even in Chicago, as a 16-year-old, I saw Minister Louis Farrakhan. I saw Jesse Jackson. I saw Henry Williamson. I saw Jeremiah Wright. Those have been my mentors in terms of what I recognize that this gospel is called for us to do, is to stand for those against injustice. And I'll close out with this. Just as I said earlier, that just as I get angry about the injustice against Black people, I also now find myself getting angry about the injustices that I see against our sisters.
I want to say that as a denomination, as Peris was saying, that our church has always been out front, and I think that we need to continue to be out front, and just to be commend what we're doing here in Georgia. That happened in Brunswick, right where we have churches in that area.
Yeah.
And so for St. Paul to take the lead this morning to coordinate and have all the ministers to come together there this afternoon, again, that just shows our leadership. That shows that people, they like our vision, and that shows that we are part of injustice, because injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere.
The church, the CME Church, has always been a liberating church. We've stood against injustice in the north, south, east, and the west. You always find our congregations, our pastors, our leaders, our laity taking a stance against injustice. So we must continue to fight a good fight and believe in what God says, that we are we are the sons and daughters of the Most High God. We the head and not the tail. We don't have to worry about anything. And specifically when they start pointing out about pastors being that, it shows that they have a fear of the power of the church. Our society fears the power of the church, and we must not step away from it. We got to stand on that power, and that power is the Holy Spirit, the Word of God, because we can make a difference. When we come together, we make a difference. And all of the movements for liberation and fight against injustice, the church has always been a part of it. Even when it comes to this Black Lives Matter march, even though it's by the young people, the church is still involved. We may not be out front, but we're giving our young people the time to step forward. But the church has always been a part of liberating, fight against injustice for Black, whites, whoever. Because that's what Christ came. He came to liberate. He was a liberator for the women back in those days. Even for us now, people are drawn to the church, the Word of God, because of its liberating power. Not afraid.
Dr. Skip, you know, brother, I did hear earlier, and Brother Holloway stole my little thunder. But Dr. King did say injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And so, and as some of my colleagues have just mentioned, we've always been on the cutting edge, even in the colored Methodists. Think about it. In the colored, remember now, when we were colored, not Christian, but when we were colored, we've always had to fight for various injustices, as well as the AME and AME Zion churches. So for me not to be there, no. I plan to be there on Thursday with you, Skip, and all the rest of you all there, because that's just what we do. And as it relates to social justice and social gospel in this church, we're doing an excellent job. The College of Bishops, when they send out things, it is fantastic, and it trickles down to us, and we carry it through. As a member of the African American Ministers Leadership Conference, I've been a member of that for a number of years now, and these are the kinds of fights, these are the kinds of things that we certainly fight about. If it were not for the church, and Martin Luther King Jr. says it best, if not now, when? When is it going to happen? We'll wait till next week. No, we're talking about Thursday. We're talking about Thursday. Talking about you have this to do, have that to do. We're talking about Thursday. Put your money where your mouth is, and let's show up, because they told us Black folk to stay at home. They do not want us there. They do not, and we want to gather there in large crowds under the leadership of our denomination, our Senior Bishop Reddick, and whatever else other bishops who's in charge. We want to be about the business of taking care of business. Thank you.
I've heard real quick. Not only on a national level, but even on a local level in our small communities, pastors and laity have been able to encourage persons that are facing oppression on their jobs, in their communities. The church is there with them, not just when it comes to something big, but every day. When people are dealing with everyday issues, the church is there for them as well. So we don't say the church just there on national level, but we want people to know the church is there even during the week. When you got to go in and you got an oppressive boss, you got to deal with some issues. The church is there to help fight for you there as well. So the church is a part of the social move for liberating.
And I was also say, Skip, we do know the late Bishop William H. Gray worked diligently with the NAACP, and then we know Bishop Henry Williamson led Operation Push. So it is in our DNA to be a part of social justice.
And Brother Skip, I think
go ahead, Manuel.
I was about to say that sometimes our white brothers try to convince us that religion and politics don't go together. But I think if we follow our history all the way back to even Moses, what Moses did when he confronted Pharaoh, that was a civil rights movement. And what Jesus did in going through the cross, leveling the playing field for men and women, for Christians, etc. The church has always been in the forefront of this movement, and I agree with Dr. Love Henry Welcher. If we don't do this in our pulpits and our people depend on us, how and when will it be done? I say that not to tell my age, but I grew up in Louisiana.
All right, now
in the 1960s. I know about rolling eyeballs law. Y'all may not understand that. Yeah.
Never heard of it.
And you couldn't, if a white person passed by, you couldn't look them in the eye. You had to look down at the ground. Okay. I grew up in the 1960s when if a white person was walking by and it was raining, we had to step off the curb into the water so that they can pass by so we wouldn't go to jail. In 1968, I was the only black child in Benton High School because they had approved segregation, but they still had 2 high schools. I wanted to see what white folks were getting that we were not getting. So I'm saying it's important for us to continue as a church to be a part of this movement, and also to remind our children that where they are now, it was not always here. Every year, when my kids, now I can't tell them what to do now because they graduated college and left home, but when they were coming up every year, I made them sit down and watch all these Black history movies so that they can understand how they got to where they are. I made them watch so much, Brother Wayne. My children asked their mother one day when she came in from work, "Mama, do we have to watch these movies before she can answer?" I said, "Yes, you do." And I explained to them why they had to watch it. So the church has to remain, pastors have to remain in the forefront for our people. Bishop Lakey said something yesterday at a meeting. I was in the 8th district. And what he reminded us was that we have a shepherd, which is Jesus Christ. And we are under shepherd. Our people are depending on us to be out in the forefront and leading them in these fights.
I agree. Listen, I think it was Bishop Thomas L. Brown, my bishop, say that we are a right now church.
All right.
Okay. That we deal in the right now, those things that are going on. And we need to make sure that we can tell. I'm glad. Listen, now that I know that you all are coming to Brunswick, I'm gonna have to go ahead and book that plane ticket for my son and tell him to fly on up to Atlanta because I need to go to Brunswick.
And I'll help you to get him back from Jackson.
Bless you, man. We need to be there in solidarity. Okay.
Yeah.
Our presence counts. So we cannot leave. I got a couple more things. So thank you for hanging in there with me. My young preacher, Reverend Lester, think he's the only mentor to Cameron. We all say Cameron. I just love his spirit. So Cameron said, "How will you all elevate the youth of the church?" Now it's a kind of a campaign kind of question, but it really shouldn't be because it is something that we hope that you are currently trying to do in the ministries that you are involved in. Or the churches that you preside over. But how are you all? What is the plan? And how are you engaging our youth to keep them in our church? Anybody can go.
Hold on, let me say, this is a major concern for our church because it not only affects the future, but it affects right now. Let me just say a few things. The church used to be the center of the community. The children and youth were brought to the church by their parents, by their grandparents, by their guardians, to Sunday school, CYF, Easter programs, to say the Easter speech. It was just a gathering place for young people to come, to be with other persons with the same morals and values. You had your first girlfriend or boyfriend when you came to church. It was just the center of the community. But time has changed and the church is no longer the center of the community. Children and families are involved in all kinds of organizations, activities, and outside the church. They even meet on Sunday morning. Therefore, we can't expect them to come to our facilities. We got to go where they are. The church was not designed to compete with schools, organized sports, specialized activities, or social media. We just weren't designed to compete on that type of level. Therefore, we got to partner and collaborate with other agencies, organizations to provide spiritual guidance, leadership, and let them know the benefits of serving the God. We must be intentional in building strategies where laity and pastors are going to where the young people are and begin to build relationships. And also provide intergenerational ministries that serve the needs not only of the children, but of the parents. We got to provide ministries that not only cultivate the spiritual growth of young people, but also ministries that help to provide better quality of life for the young people and their families. We just can't target one group. We just can't target the children and the youth. We can target the whole family to make it a holistic ministry. So that they are, that's what the whole family benefits. The One Church, One School by Bishop Henry Williamson, it leads us in the right direction. It's not just connecting us with a school building, it's connecting us with the students and their families. If we want to make an impact in their lives, we got to go where they are, make sure we have ministries when they come to the church that they can get involved in, not just the children and the youth, but whole families. Because if the kids come and then they go back into their homes and they learn a whole different way of life, we're in the midst of a struggle.
Yeah.
So we got to get the whole family. Now let me stop there and let my other brother.
I was just going to say that where I am is that because I like technology, I took technology to Pine Mountain, and my young people, they actually run the video for me on Sundays.
Oh, wow.
And then they came up and they told me, they said, Pastor, we play football. So my daughter and I, we actually went to a football game. Mm-hmm. And two of my young men, they actually won the state championship last year. And they were at church today. And the first time I asked them, I said, how we doing? I said, this was Pastor, we got one more game and we're going to be in Atlanta. And I said, I'll be there. So again, we have to be involved in what they're involved in. Right. And also to show them that we can go outside of the church and be part of the activities outside of the church. Mm-hmm. And when you show an interest in what they're doing outside of the church, that would trickle over and they would come back to the church. But again, I got them involved in technology because they love technology. They can run it better than I can.
And an example of that is, why not become the chaplain for that school football team? Travel with them, volunteer to be the chaplain for the school football team. Adapt the schoolroom and go in there and make sure that we have a presence so that we build relationships. We have to volunteer where they are.
Absolutely. And Brother
Skip,
go ahead.
I was listening at you, colleague Henderson.
Oh, okay. All right. And thank you, Brother Wayne. I appreciate it. I think the primary function, I heard somebody say the word family. The primary function of family is to ensure the continuity of society, and without that institution, congregants and family, they fall into a different trap. I think one way that we can help our young people, I think what we do is we call them young adults. They are adults. Mm-hmm. And even though they are young adults, we give them ministries, but we tell them how to do it.
Right.
And I think if we're going to experience all that they are, we're going to have to allow them to be a part of the total ministries, listen to what they have to say, and not try to tell them what to do because they are young adults. And we're going to have to give them full responsibilities and allow them to be a part of the church from top to bottom. When I first came to Lane 4 years ago, our major musician was moving to Houston, I believe. We had a 15-year-old young lady who could play the piano just as good as anybody. I made her the lead musician. Somebody asked me the question, yes, that's what I'm going to do. No, we're not going to cut her salary. She plays just as good as everybody. We have to treat young adults as what they are. They are adults. But too many times when we give them tasks, we tell them what we want them to do. And I think when we do that, we miss out on all that they are. So I think we have to be willing to move over a little bit or to work with and allow them to show us who they are, even at our church. When there's something new that comes in, I just tell the grandmamas and the daddies, go ask your children. They know more about technology than most of us. So we have to give them an active part in church from top to bottom.
And Dr. Mason, with respect to what my colleague said, though, I believe you asked something about this youth. Karen is a youth 12 to 17. And one of the things we need to understand, as we all do now, don't get me wrong, the different intricacies, of our church, 12, 0 to 11 is their children, and 12 to 17 youth, 18, 35 young adults. After that, the older adults. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying to you is, I notice a lot, even in our church sometimes, when the youth are up doing something, sing children, come on children. Mm-hmm. They're not children, they're youth. They're youth, they're 12 to 17. And we need to give them that respect. Those persons, before they are able to hold an office, have to be 18 years old to hold one, right? In the CME Church. And my point is, Dr. Mason, I know I can see your head, you ready to get off the show. You want me to shut up. But here's what I'm saying to you. I'm talking about the laos, the people of God that's below the age of 18 before they officially take office. We need to train those persons in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not be trained apart from that training. What I'm saying to you is, when I was coming up, and I'm showing my age too, Brother Henderson, I don't have a bit of problem with that either, growing up in the 60s, down in St. Paul and Walls, Mississippi. But what I'm saying to you is, we had junior stewards. Junior students.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah,
we had junior trustees.
Yes, we sure did.
There's nothing wrong with our CYF manual. It's great. And all of that. We didn't have that years ago, but we. And the CYF song and things of that nature. I think those things are what I call principle. And here's my thing, and I'll be through. I'll keep my big mouth shut, but let me just say this. Methods are many. Principles are few. Methods change often, but principles never do. Methods are many. Principles are few. Methods change often.
All right.
Line is all the things in the discipline in the Bible are principles. What we do, we need to make sure that we change the method and not distort the principle. So the youth are very important. And if we go back to the initial stages, though, go back to the basics, as the theme say, and deal with the junior students and the junior students and the trustee. What's wrong with them holding up the trays and things of that nature while the adults are their supervisors? What's wrong with them going back in the back room and counting money and just sitting back for a minute until it's their turn? We've got to get back to the basic, and when we do that, we will be the church that God wants us to be.
I totally agree with you, Wayne, on that. And I was a junior steward, and we just thought it was something big at Westside just to be able to collect the offering, and then to go back into the room, you know, and count the change. They wouldn't let us count the dollars, but we counted the change. Listen, your time is valuable. I got a couple of more things. Paris, I'll let you chime in on that. And what I want to ask you about what are going to be the hot topics at the general conference. I just want you to give me one or two, and then I'm going to ask you to give me your closing thoughts. And in your closing thought, if you would, what did this pandemic teach you? Okay, what did you learn about yourself in the pandemic, and also about the resilience of the church? Paris, go right ahead. I think you want to chime in.
Yeah, you want to close the statement, everything now?
No. I thought you wanted to chime in on the statement about the youth.
Yeah, thank you again. Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. We definitely have to embrace the youth. I say as a pastor, one thing about the youth and really all the members, but especially the youth, I think it's key to, first of all, get to know them, get to know their names. As a pastor, I try to work hard to make sure that I get to know their name. So when I see them, I call them out. That's what happened even with Cameron. You know, I called him and said, look, well, I needed somebody to run the technology during the pandemic. We had the equipment, we just didn't have the know-how. Right. And so we have to embrace the young people. We've had worship services where all the youth have led. And just like my other colleagues, I was a junior steward, I was a junior usher, I was an alkalite, I did it all. So I do understand that it is critical, it is important for us to embrace the youth. That is an old adage says that if you don't have any babies crying in your church is dying. Yeah. So we've got to have babies, we've got to have youth. That gives us our future. The youth are 40% of our population, but they're 100% of our future. So we must invest in them. We cannot miss an opportunity when we have youth, when we have children, to make that type of investment. And a lot of times the investment, we are quick to give investment in terms of capital, monies, but also we have to make the investment of our time. And I think that's another part that help us to grow the church with our children and youth, that we must invest time with them. We have to spend time with them, learn the language, learn what's going on, because so much has changed. I mean, one thing about it, all of us, we never had to go to school in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We never had to deal with going to school by looking at a screen. So there's so many things that we still can even learn from them.
Sure. So let's shift gears as we prepare to close out. And I think I found out the problem. Facebook said that I had 28 seconds of copyright material. So I don't know whether one of your sermons was copyrighted. I know you're so powerful and often quoted that you copyright your material. That was probably Billy Holloway who got everything copyrighted.
Well, you gotta pay to use my stuff. I'm sorry, you gotta pay.
That shut me down on Facebook today. But I'm gonna ask Dr. Duhart if she would send the YouTube link out to everybody, so those who normally watch on Facebook would get an opportunity to hear this wonderful conversation. So what we want to do is, what are some of the issues? Just make it real brief now. What are a couple of the hot topics that we're going to be facing at the General Conference? And we're going to start with you, Wayne, and work our way around. Then I'm going to come back.
You said make it very quick.
Yeah.
I'll make it very quick.
Okay.
I'm convinced, that it's really not so much of the election to me as much as it is we've got to start dealing with the finance. How are we going to deal with with our budget? Hopefully it will not be raised. I'm on the board of finance for the CME Church. Right now it's looking great that we're working on that there will not be a raise in the conference claims. So that's one thing. And then to have that strategic plan that they've been working on, to have it in place. And when we leave that general conference, we will leave there with the strategic plan ready to go from day one. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Brother Skip, I'll be short as well. I suspect that one of the hot topics is the same as I think Brother Wayne has said, is it would be on local church assessments. Mm-hmm. In terms of, not only in pandemic, but in some of our rural churches are fading out. I think we're going to have to look at some kind of endowment, some other stream of revenue to come into our churches. I really believe that that's going to be one of the hot topics of our church in terms of the gathering of our general conference assessments.
Thank you. Dr. Washington, what are some of the hot topics?
It's going to be, as my colleagues just said, finance, the structure of the different departments, and boundary issues.
Boundary. Okay. Dr. Holloway?
Well, again, I concur with my colleagues as well. We always want to know about the budget. That's what the church wants to know when we go. When you all go there, don't raise my budget, And I'm hoping that we can look at budget and look at trying to find ways to bring in resources that the church needs to function. We know that we need finances, but we cannot pass this burden on to the local church. We got to be creative in ways to generate income and make our church a sustainable church for the next 1 years.
Thank you. Elder Lester?
Thank you. I agree with all my colleagues. Yes, the budget, there'll be boundary issues. I think another issue in terms of the strategic plan. But I think one of the greatest issues is who's going to get elected. I think that's the big thing. I think when we cut to the chase, folk coming there to see who's going to be 64, 65, or 66. And by the way, I'll take either one of them.
I was born in 64, so I took.
But I think y'all go. There you go.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
But what I was simply saying was that I do believe, though, the election is going to be a major topic. Who are you voting for?
Absolutely.
Why? I mean,
and as Dr. Hollinshed has said, will the delegates elect another female bishop?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. If not now, I think I got everybody in terms of hot topic. It is going to be interesting. You made some compelling points. I want to learn more about the boundary. I do plan to invite Bishop Reddick back and whomever to talk about the strategic plan, to give them an opportunity to tell us what's going on with that. So I want to end with your closing thoughts. Okay. And just share what's on your heart and mind, and also what this pandemic taught you. And I'm going to start with you, Peris, and then I'm going to work my way, and I'll end with you, Brother Wayne. Peris, give me your closing thoughts, please.
Okay. Again, thank you, Skip, for this opportunity to share. And I thank God for all of my colleagues who have been on today and those other aspirants that have had their times on this platform. Thank you so very much for, first of all, being bold enough to do this. I really appreciate you taking this type of time to really build this platform, a platform of excellence. And I said it earlier, I was joking, but I do really mean it. It did grieve me that we were slighted on the history of the Black church, but I am so grateful that you have given us a platform to really showcase the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, the church that I love, and I am grateful for that. I do believe that in this pandemic, again, I go back to this, it happened in 2020, that God opened up our eyes to really see the things that are important. I believe that during this pandemic, we learned about how valuable teachers are, because parents had to sit at home with their children. And some parents learned that the teachers weren't lying on their children. So that I think that this was a great time in this pandemic, that it really opened our eyes. It opened our eyes in so many fronts as we confronted the issue of essential workers and not paying them a livable wage. It also opened up our eyes to see, does the church really matter? Will we have a future? Are we relevant today? So I think that the pandemic has taught us what really matters, what's really critical, and what is essential for us in life. And even now, many persons have been at home nearly 2 years watching church online. How will we be able to get persons to come back into our churches? Yeah. And even when we pray the pandemic ends, we can't stop being online.
That's right.
And I say that this one thing that also in this pandemic, and I've shared this with pastors on the district where I serve, internet is just as important as electricity in your church. The same way you pay your electric bill, you've got to pay your internet bill, because this is just a means that we must have to do ministry. It is no longer an option for churches to be online.
That's right.
It's no longer an option for you to have a Facebook page. Yeah. It is a necessity.
Right.
It is not a luxury.
Yeah.
And for us to continue to engage in ministry, we've got to meet people where they are.
Where they are.
And again, Jesus says, "Go ye therefore into all of the world."
Yeah.
And the first W is World Wide Web.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think that the pandemic has really taught us that we must embrace this change, this new technology. Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Presiding Elder, Reverend Peris J. Lester. Reverend Dr. Billy Holloway, give me your closing thoughts, please, sir.
Well, again, Dr. Mason, we thank you for this platform. And as you recall, I have been trying to get you to do something like this years ago. And again, I just hope that our church will look at technology and not let us go back to the old landmark, going back to doing church and meetings as usual. I'm hoping and praying that we can take and build and realize that we can be connected and not necessarily physically be there, but we can take this technology and go into all the world. I'm hoping and praying that our church can take this and grow with it and learn from this. The pandemic has allowed us to do church, but we're doing it differently. We're still having worship. We're still congregating. But for many of us, we did it online and through Zoom calls and through conference calls. I'm hoping and praying that we can continue to embrace this. And in order to be relevant, to serve this present age, we must do it with technology and the gift that God has given us. And I'm hoping and praying that as a church and as a denomination, that we will put money into technology, because this is a good platform. This is great. I'm at my home here in Georgia. Wayne is in Jackson, Mississippi. Peris is in Tennessee. Manuel is down in Louisiana, and Phillip is over in Washington area somewhere. But we all are Detroit. But we all are connected by using technology. So let us be relevant. Let us serve this present age. Let us embrace technology, because the church is not going back to the way we used to do church.
Absolutely.
You're going to have to continue to have a presence on the World Wide Web.
Amen. Amen. Reverend Dr. Phillip Washington, presiding elder, give me your closing thoughts, please, sir.
Again, let me thank you, Dr. Mason, for this outstanding event. You've been a blessing to the church, and we just stand in awe of what God has done in you that allowed us to the CME Church continue to grow. Let me thank God for all these outstanding men of God who I've known for many years, and we work together, and we're not competing with one another. We're working together to build up the body of Christ, to be a blessing to the church. So again, I thank God for all of you on this evening. The pandemic has positioned the church in that we have learned to appreciate and cherish our gathering, whether it be in the church building and Zoom or otherwise. It made us focus on the purpose of our gathering. The pandemic pushed us to do 21st century ministry. It made us come out of our sacred buildings and go into all the world to practice what we preach. Because the church was never meant to be stagnated, stiff-necked, and isolated in the world, but to be alive in the world. The church was made for us to be influential in our homes and our communities and with our relationships with our family members, our neighbors, our friends, and even our enemies. Our gathering in buildings and the number of people in the church building is not a sole reflection of the quality or effectiveness of our ministry. It's where we gather to prepare to go out into the world. So even though our numbers may have dwindled a little bit while we're in the building, it never meant we stopped doing the work of the church. The question we face now is, how do we adapt to this evolving model of church? Will we go back to try to keep doing what we used to do? Or will we stand on where God has pushed us to and start to effectively do ministry to reach this present age? I want to thank God for this opportunity to be on this evening, and it's just been a pleasure to have this discussion. I look forward to more discussions like this with my colleagues and others, because the church, the CME Church, is a blessing. And again, thank you, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity. And hello to all the family across the CME Connection. We are facing some tough times ahead, and we must work together to make it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Washington. Appreciate that very much. Reverend Dr. Manuel Henderson, give me your closing thoughts, please, sir.
To you, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity to be on, even in this pandemic when we cannot get together in mass numbers. But you have provided this platform for people across the CME Connection to see the candidates. And I give a shout out to the other aspirants who've been on before us on tonight. So I'll give you kudos for that, and I appreciate you for that. And I know the people at the Westminster Church are blessed to have you there at this point in time. And Brothers Mason, I need to say to you, I have an affinity for the people of Westminster since I served as their pastor earlier. So I appreciate that. Let me just say that the pandemic I believe, has shown us some openings or some opportunities that some of us may not have ever realized if it had not been for the pandemic. I believe the pandemic forced us to deal with real evangelism via social media. It made the Bible come true when Jesus told his disciples to go you therefore into all the world. And some of us have not been out of the city that we're in, but via social media, we are forced to do that. I believe that now that we are on social media, it has caused some persons to sharpen their message and face new opportunities for ministry outside of the walls of our local churches. I'll say this, that even in social media time, the method is different, but the message is still the same. And I think some of us in this pandemic time has used the pandemic as a challenge, while others have used it as a crutch. I pray that we will accept all of the challenges that are presented to us during this pandemic so that we can continue to grow our ministry. Again, Brother Skip, thank you for this opportunity. And God be with all of my brothers who are on here and those brothers and sisters who were before us. Blessings.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. And please know I stand on your shoulders at the Great West Mitchell Street in a line of great preachers and pastors and pontificators who have served at the Mitch. God bless you. Last but certainly not least, the Reverend Dr. Wayne Williams. Give us your closing thoughts, please, sir. Hold on 1 second, Wayne. All right, there you go. Go right ahead. Wayne.
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, then. Thank you so very much, Dr. Mason. First of all, I want to say to you, man, how much I really appreciate this ministry that God has given you. It's a ministry, and I appreciate that ministry. And I appreciate you just stepping in and doing what God has called you to do as it relates to this. We had 10 men, and we have about 4 wonderful ladies that giving themselves, that's rather offering themselves for the episcopacy. I don't think the church would be upset. I don't think that's not a person that's offering themselves for bishop would not make a good bishop. I think the church would be in good hands, great hands. I've been here before, been there and done that, and have the T-shirt to prove that. This is certainly my second round, and I'm telling you, the people that are on here are very, very, very wonderful candidates. With that, I want to say, as it relates to the pandemic, is that this pandemic has made the church be the church. It has made people be who they really are. The reality of people. There are some folk, I hate to say it, that were in the choirs that are no longer in there, but I'm going back with my colleague, Reverend Dr. Henderson, that said they use it for a crutch. So now they don't want to come to choir rehearsal and things of that nature. I know what I'm talking about as it relates to that. Hopefully this pandemic will help the persons to come back to the church with a special, watch this, calling. If it's not a calling, you don't need to do it anyway. So again, I want to thank you, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity. The pandemic, we need to realize and recognize, brothers and sisters, we're not going back to business as usual. It's a new day. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's a new day. And so we should always be hybrid. I thank God for the Lynch Street CME Church. We have a 90-something-year-old lady. If she can get on Zoom, we call her Queen. If Queen can get on Zoom and do all of the things, certainly people that are 12 years old and under and above, they can certainly get on here. She looked forward to getting herself on Zoom because she realizes at 94 years old that it's a new day. And I want to say, as I close, our job, Brother Skip, is to serve, a charge to keep all of us well, of God to glorify.
Yes.
Never dying soul to save and fitted for the sky. But here's the deal: to serve this present age.
Present age.
Present age, not back there in the 1920s, but to serve this present age. Our calling here is to fulfill it. Oh, may it all my power to do my master's will. God bless you. I love you.
Love you too. Look, I was looking at Paris. Paris said, I knew that Negro was going to try to close out this. I knew.
Wayne Allen Williams. I was waiting for it too.
We were all waiting for it, and that was strategically done. Listen, thank you, brothers. You all have been tremendous and so generous with your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Duhart, love you dearly. Please send an email out with the YouTube link to the church for the people who are on Facebook. Lord, somebody on Facebook think I blocked them from the show because they were asking. I didn't do that. I promise you, I did not do that. Just had to deal with a Facebook issue. But thank you all for your time and for your effort. I'll see some of you, God willing, in Brunswick. And I agree, our church is in great hands. Let me share this quick announcement with you from Reverend Cassandra Keys, the Ministers and Layman Council workshop number 3 on November the 21st via Zoom. And you can participate in that. And don't forget this Tuesday, again, See Me Grow. And also the practices, let me put that up right quick. Circle Network, Sisters with the Vision, etc. So you can get that information and tune in and be engaged. God bless you on next Sunday. I look forward to the lay. I'm sometimes accused of having a whole lot of pastors on, but the lay, as they say, the lay got something to say. And if you look at this group of lay,
amen,
you know they got something.
All right now. All right.
All right.
Excellent group. Excellent group.
Excellent group.
Yeah.
Excellent group.
Yeah.
I'm looking so forward. And then the following week, I have Dr. Leo Pinkett and the men of the ministry.
Man up.
Yes, indeed. Man up. And they're coming.
Yeah.
My brothers, God bless you. Take care. Be safe. And continue to stay in the fight. Go in love and go in peace. God bless each of
Thank you,
you.
Doc.
Great job, brother. Great job.
Thank you, Doc. God bless.
Great job, lady.
God
Bless
bless
you.
you.
Great job. Great job, brother.
Daniel, good
Thank
job,
you.
Doc. Thanks,
Thank you.
Dr. Mason.
Yeah. All right.
Enjoy.
God bless.
And this concludes. Let me. There we go.